Children grow up believing that the people who brought them into the world will automatically provide warmth, safety, and unconditional affection. It feels almost instinctive to trust that parents will be gentle, nurturing, and protective. But what happens when the very people who are supposed to offer love become the source of emotional wounds? Many people never realize how common this is. Back in 2008, the Administration for Children and Families under the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services documented more than 50,000 children who were officially recognized as victims of psychological and emotional harm. That number doesn't even reflect the countless silent cases that go unreported. Emotional injury often leaves no visible scars, yet the impact can last far longer than any physical bruise. Words can linger inside the mind like echoes that never quite fade, shaping a child's understanding of themselves and the world. When harsh comments come from strangers, they sting. But when they come from a parent, they can alter the entire foundation of a child's identity. The tone that adults use, the vocabulary they choose, the way they react to mistakes or differences, all of this becomes the blueprint on which a child builds their sense of worth. A parent's guidance can turn into a child's inner voice. So when that guidance is cruel, belittling, dismissive, or manipulative, the child grows up battling thoughts that were never their own to begin with. A lot of people wonder how to recognize a toxic parent. Since children naturally trust their caregivers, they often cannot see toxicity for what it is until years later, when the effects have already woven themselves into their personality. One of the earliest signs lies in how a parent talks about a child's physical appearance. Some adults casually mock their child's face, body shape, height, or features, thinking it's harmless teasing. Remarks like calling them unattractive, too big, too small, awkward, or flawed may seem like throwaway comments to the parent, but to the child they become seeds of insecurity. Children internalize these evaluations deeply, and they begin to examine their bodies with fear and shame rather than acceptance. This kind of talk can later manifest as eating struggles, body dysmorphia, or lifelong embarrassment about their appearance. A parent's role is to help their child feel comfortable in their own skin, not teach them to critique every part of themselves. Another harmful pattern appears through sarcastic or mocking questions about how the child behaves. When adults constantly ask why the child moves, talks, laughs, or expresses themselves in a certain way, it sends the signal that their natural behavior is unacceptable. Children believe what their parents say far more literally than adults realize. A small comment delivered in frustration can make a child feel defective for years. These doubts follow them into adolescence and adulthood, making them overly self-conscious in social interactions. They may hesitate to speak up, struggle to show their authentic personality, or constantly worry that people are judging them for things they cannot even control. What started as a parent's careless remarks becomes a lifelong fear of being laughed at or misunderstood. Some of the most devastating comments are those that question the child's very right to exist. When parents express regret about having the child or imply that their life would be easier without them, the emotional devastation is immeasurable. Sentences that suggest the child was a mistake or should never have been born can destroy their sense of belonging in the world. It plants the painful belief that their existence itself is a burden. Children who grow up hearing these messages may later develop depression, self-hatred, or a sense that they need to earn love just to justify being alive. A child should feel valued simply because they exist, not because they meet certain conditions or expectations. A related toxic behavior appears when parents constantly remind the child of how difficult, expensive, or exhausting they are. When adults complain about the cost of raising them or insist that caring for them is draining, the child learns to shrink themselves to avoid causing trouble. Instead of expressing needs, emotions, or worries, they suppress everything to avoid irritation or punishment. Some children begin solving their own problems far too early in life because they fear their parents' reactions. Others seek attention and affection from the wrong places because they never received healthy emotional support at home. Research has even shown that children deprived of affection sometimes turn to destructive behaviors to fill the void. A child who feels like a burden learns to survive rather than live. Another common toxic pattern is comparison. When parents hold up siblings, cousins, or other children as examples and say things like, "Look at them, they're better," it sends a message that the child is inadequate, no matter what they do. Constant comparison erodes confidence and replaces it with resentment, jealousy, and self-doubt. Instead of discovering their unique strengths, the child becomes trapped in a cycle of trying to measure up to someone else's talents or achievements. Even worse, comparing siblings against each other can create a lifetime of rivalry and emotional distance that persists long after childhood. Each child deserves room to grow into their own identity without being pitted against someone else. Direct verbal attacks also fall under the umbrella of emotional abuse. Calling a child stupid, useless, hopeless, or incapable can carve deep grooves into their self-esteem. These words eventually become the internal soundtrack of their mind. A child repeatedly told they can't succeed often stops trying altogether because they've been trained to expect failure. Parents should help children believe in their potential, not convince them that they have none. Some toxic parents go even further by threatening to abandon the child, telling them that they'll be left alone, given away, or deserted can instill lifelong fears of rejection. This kind of manipulation teaches the child that love is conditional and unstable. As they grow older, they may cling too tightly to relationships or avoid them entirely because they're terrified of being left behind. It becomes difficult to trust anyone when the people who were supposed to stay planted the fear of disappearance. There is also the issue of broken promises. When adults make commitments and consistently fail to follow through, the child's trust slowly dissolves. A child depends on stability and honesty to feel secure. When promises repeatedly collapse, they learn not to rely on anyone. It becomes a lesson in disappointment, teaching them that expecting good things is dangerous because it always leads to letdowns. This pattern later influences friendships, romantic relationships, and even professional interactions, because a part of them always waits for people to break their word. Even though none of these behaviors leave physical marks, their impact can be just as damaging, sometimes more. Childhood is the foundation upon which every adult identity is built. The words a child hears, the tone they absorb, the emotional environment they live in, all of it becomes part of the architecture of their mind. Emotional wounds are real wounds. They influence how a person communicates, how they love, how they cope with stress, how they react to conflict, and how they see themselves. Many people walk through life carrying burdens they can't name because they were taught early on that their feelings were invalid or unnecessary. Some struggle with insecurity or perfectionism because they were told they were never enough. Others battle anxiety because they were raised to expect abandonment. Some people grow up searching desperately for approval because they never received it freely. And even though these adults may look confident from the outside, on the inside they are still trying to heal the younger version of themselves who was never given the chance to feel safe. If you've experienced any of these forms of emotional harm, you're not alone. And it does not mean you are weak or overly sensitive. It means you are shaped by an environment that failed to protect you. Emotional abuse is often invisible, but its effects are widespread and deeply felt. Recognizing these patterns is the first step toward healing. And if you know someone who might recognize themselves in this story, sharing this message can help them feel seen, understood, and less isolated. Awareness matters. The more people understand the power of their words, the more likely future parents will choose compassion over cruelty, patience over anger, and understanding over judgment. Childhood should be a chapter filled with guidance and love, not confusion and fear. And every child deserves to grow up believing they matter, simply because they do. Have you experienced any of these forms of abuse? How do you feel about them? Do you know someone who has and could benefit from watching this video? Please consider sharing this video to reach worldwide attention, so parents or future parents can also be more mindful about how they talk to their children. If you care about our mission, please don't forget to subscribe for more of our psychology content. And as always, thanks for watching.